This time on the Families Matter Most podcast.
Talking about the past isn't the same as processing the past. But as I made space for that and allowed the feeling of loneliness, abandonment, and neglect, I felt myself exhale for maybe the first time in my whole life.
Every time Jenn Dean speaks, I can see hope, knowledge, expertise, wisdom, and love.
When Jenn Dean speaks about parenting, we make sure that we are there to listen because we know we will get valuable advice.
Families Matter Most with Jenn Dean.
She doesn't just give skills for us to be better parents, but she teaches us how to reach our children's hearts. And at the end of the day, that's what truly matters.
I am so excited about this series. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I've been a little bit nervous because I want to make sure I'm doing this well. I want to make sure I'm representing and honoring my clients. So I'm not sharing anything that it would be considered private. Of course, when I work with clients, it's completely confidential. So if you're thinking about hiring me and having me as your coach, I don't want you to worry that I'm going to be sharing about you on a podcast. That was a real concern of mine. I didn't want any of my clients to feel nervous. What I'm going to do is a series of real coaching scenarios. Now, some of these are exact, and in that case, I have gotten permission from the client to share kind of the generalities of what's going on. Sometimes I'm changing names. Sometimes I'm picking kind of a persona of a grouping of clients, something that I come across frequently, something that is kind of common that I spend a lot of time helping clients through. And sometimes I'm just kind of creating a persona and giving them a name. So you do not have to worry. There is no privacy being breached. Everything is completely confidential when you work with me. But what I have done is I'm creating kind of a series of case studies. And these are common struggles and issues. And I think this is going to be so helpful for you. I think you're going to hear yourself in some of these next few podcasts. So if this is new and you've never done life coaching before, I think you're going to see kind of where you might find this helpful for you. I think you're going to gain something from this that you can apply in your life. If you've thought maybe one day you'd like to pursue it yourself, this will be valuable. You can see kind of what it is and what we work through and how it can help you in every area of your life, not just the reason you've kind of booked the strategy call. I'm really pumped. I'm excited. I'm calling this one, Why Do We Need to Talk About the Past? Or Why Are You So Busy, Jenn? Because this one's going to be about me. I'm going to be honest, kind of vulnerable. I'm going to share some of my story. Of course, the best coaches have coaches. And the reason that I love coaching families is because I've done it all. I sat on my steps and cried every single day when I was a young mom. When I had little people, I felt like a failure. I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't reaching my kids' hearts. I was yelling at them every day. I was angry. I was miserable. I felt guilty. I felt shame. I felt exhausted and overwhelmed and burnt out. I was not enjoying motherhood the way that I wanted to. Not all the time, anyway. So I learned some things. I got some skills. I reached out. I got help. I found what works and what doesn't. And now I get to share it with you. So today I'm going to share with you some of the things that helped me, not necessarily in the parenting realm, because I teach lots of parenting things and strategies and real ways to get your kids to listen and to get along and to be kind. All of those things, real strategies for bedtime and mealtime and getting into the car, all of that. I teach those things. But in this series, I want to focus on you. What's going on in your head? What's going on in your heart? And what's the point of talking about the past? I get this every once in a while. I love this question. I love it. Why do we even need to bother? It's in the past. It was so long ago. What's the point of dredging this up? You know, I'm here because I want to lose weight. I'm here because I want to get my kids to listen. I'm here because I want to stop yelling, not to bring up my past. Why do we have to spend all this time talking about my past? Well, that's a great question. How do we know when it's something we should talk about? How do we know? And here's what I would say to that. I would say, is it really in the past, or is it part of your life today? Is it affecting your life today? Some of the things from our past, sure, okay, that happened. It's in the past. We can let it go. We can move on. But some other things, it is still affecting you today. So in that case, I would say, hold on, wait a minute. It's not in the past. It is here with you now in the present. So let's deal with it. Let's look at it. Talking about the past isn't the same as processing it. And this is where we go wrong. You can go out with your girlfriend, you can have coffee, you can rehash it, you can talk about it. And here's the thing, you can talk about the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same details over and over. You can talk in circles about these things. But if you feel the same afterwards, then there hasn't really been any progress, has there? If you feel the same about that past, if you feel the same, if you have the same thoughts, the same feelings, then what have you really done? There hasn't been any processing. There hasn't been any movement, any health there. You're just kind of rehashing the same things. It's not the same. Just talking about it isn't the same as processing it. What I want you to do is get into the pit. So it's even worse. If you're already thinking, oh, Jen, I don't want to talk about the past, then you're going to hate this even more. Because I want you to not just talk about it, I want you to get into it. Let's get into the pit. Have you heard me talk about the pit of despair? Or the pit of despair, right? From that movie. You know that movie? You know the movie I'm talking about with the pit of despair. Oh, I can't. Sean, you have to help me. Sean, my husband, is the producer. Sean, you got to put a clip of that movie in. I can't even remember what it is. Help me.
The pit of despair. Don't even think. Don't even think about trying to escape.
The pit of despair. You need to get into it, not just talk about the pit. You can't just talk about it happening. You need to climb down into the pit. You need to sit in it. You need to look around. You need to get curious about what it's really like in there. How terrible is it? Is it really helpful to just talk about, that thing that happened to me back when I was in grade 8, that thing that happened to me back when I was 20, that thing that someone said to me that hurt my feelings? Well, if we can get in there and look around, and how horrible was it really? So yeah, I know. It's not fun. There's a reason people don't want to get into the pit of despair. We will go to great lengths to avoid it. We will do all kinds of things to numb and distract and avoid. We will jump on social media. We will get addicted to shopping or pornography or sugar or alcohol. We will do all kinds of things to distract, to numb, to avoid. But there is something really powerful when you decide to stop fighting it. You look down into that despair and that gloom and you decide, okay, I'm going to find a way, not alone. I'm going to find a way to get in there, to sit in there, to look around. It is really helpful to have somebody to get into the pit with you, someone who's there. There's a reason we don't want to do it. Let's just honor that. It is not fun. It's kind of scary. And it always feels like it's a deeper, darker despairer, if that's the word. It always feels like it's worse once you get in. It always feels like if you get into that pit of despair, you're never getting out. It is never ending. You're going to be trapped there forever. You're never going to get out. And I want to honor that feeling. It's a true fear, but it is not the case. It's never as bad as you think. It's really helpful to have someone with you, someone who can lean in and not be uncomfortable, who can ask you questions to help you uncover specific thoughts and feelings that are going on. I'm going to share my story of getting into some of my pits of despair. Now, you may know that I was abandoned as a child. So my father wasn't in the picture. My mother left me with her parents and moved away. So I was raised by my grandparents. And to be fair, I did have people that loved me. I did. But there was a ton of hurt and pain, and my family never talked about it. We just never talked about it in a way that brought healing. We would complain. It's kind of like we would talk about the pit. We would talk about the thing that happened, but I was never allowed to get in and feel the feelings. And I think, listening, you might be able to relate to that. Have you been ever able to acknowledge some of the pain and some of the hurt that happened to you? And do you have people, safe people that have asked you the hard questions and have been willing to sit there and let you kind of process that? My family couldn't do that. We never talked about it. I was expected to just be fine in all of it, and I appeared to be. I acted the part. I seemed just fine. In fact, I tried to be perfect, right? Nobody would ever see how hurt I was, how angry I was, how rejected I felt, how unloved I felt. Nobody could see that. I didn't want anyone to know. One interesting aspect of my journey is that I never wanted to be alone with my thoughts. I avoided journaling. I never wanted to talk about the emotions of my childhood. I didn't want to get in the pit because it was just too much. It was too much to bear. But as a kid, funny, I thought of it as boring. See, I didn't have the vocabulary, probably the understanding, and there was some dysfunction, clearly. I thought of it as boring. So I did not want to be bored. To me, being bored was the worst thing. When I decided to stop fighting and I got into the pit, I had so many revelations, and I'm going to share them with you because I never would have got here without being willing to stop fighting it, to turn around, to look at it, and to allow space for it, to let it be there. Here are some of my revelations. Number one, as I got curious and I looked around, I realized I really hated boredom, and that's always been a thing. Hence the title, Jen, why are you so busy? I hated boredom. I always stayed busy. To me, boredom was like the worst. It was the worst thing. It was the worst feeling. I would do anything to stay busy so I wouldn't be bored. I would take on projects. I would do extra things. I would distract myself. As I thought about that, I realized that it affected me as a mom. If my kids said they were bored, I would lose it. I would overreact. Very strong feelings about boredom. I worried that my kids were going to be lazy. I couldn't be okay with them being bored. I would react with anger. Like, it was extreme. So hence, right, why do we have to talk about the past? Well, clearly it wasn't just in the past. It was affecting me today. It was affecting me in the present. I had to work through it. So that was my first revelation, is I see, okay, I really have a problem with boredom. I always have. This is how I reacted to it as a kid. This is how I'm reacting to it as an adult. I was so busy. I didn't want to be bored. Number two, as I continued to investigate my strong reaction to boredom, I realized that the word was wrong, right? I'm a kid. I'm coming up with the best words that I know. And so I came up with the word bored. I hate being bored. I can't stand being bored. But that was incorrect. What I thought of as boredom as a kid, I think was actually loneliness. Can you see the similarities? A kid being bored might look similar to a kid being lonely. I was hurting and I was lonely. And acknowledging that's imagine unwrapping that as a little kid, hurt and lonely. Acknowledging that I was unwanted in the world was more than I could bear. It was too much. It was too big for me alone. So I've associated busyness as an antidote to boredom, but in actuality, it was loneliness all along. It was loneliness I was avoiding. Okay, so that felt truer to me. It's not the boredom that's the issue, it's loneliness. It's because if I stop and I'm alone with my thoughts, then what comes up is loneliness. And that was terrifying to me. It was more than I could handle. Number three, my third revelation, when I climbed into the pit of despair, was that I could make space for loneliness. And as I let go of the idea that I have to stay busy, and I allowed myself to feel the utter devastation. I'm not minimizing it. There's a reason we avoid the pit of despair in our life. But as I made space for that and allowed the feeling of loneliness, abandonment, and neglect, I felt myself, does this make sense to you? I felt myself exhale for maybe the first time in my whole life. And now I'm crying. I stopped fighting. I could journal again. I could feel the feelings. I could be more accepting of myself. I could be more accepting of my kids. Now when they say they're bored, I'm not overreacting to it. I'm realizing, okay, yeah, boredom, that's different. That's not what I was feeling. What I was feeling was loneliness. And of course I was lonely. I was a little kid who, right, felt like she was alone in the world and she had nobody. Of course she was hurt. So that's the difference, right? That's the difference. Come on, Jen, pull yourself together. Talking about the past isn't the same as processing the past. Even now, like the tears that I have now aren't the same. They're like accepting tears. They're just kind of honoring. They're honoring that little girl in me that had to carry so much hurt and pain for so long by herself. So that's why when I work with a client and there's tears and they start to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm crying. I am like, no, those tears are precious. We don't ever apologize for tears in our sessions. So I'm not going to apologize for mine. I'm going to pull myself together though. Going through this process has made me more accepting of myself and my kids. I'm able to handle some tough emotions better and not overreact because I'm working on it. So as you can see, talking about the past isn't the same as processing the past. You can talk about the things, but it's different when you get into it. And I recommend you don't do that alone. I recommend you find somebody that you trust and you work through it with them. But still do it. Still do the work. It's worth it. Even now, even though there's tears, I still feel lighter. I still feel like I'm who I am. This is me, right? And I have some of these emotions that I carry. And that's okay. Even in the midst of it, that's okay. Talking about the past is like a pile of papers you just keep shuffling around, moving from place to place. Right? It's annoying. You've got this pile and you see it there and you're like, man, I should deal with those. I think there's probably some important things in there, but I don't want to. So I'm just going to move it to a different place and to a different place and to a different place. No matter how much you talk about it, nothing changes. You can't just throw them away, right? We wish that we could. We try to hide them, but we can't. You know that you need to deal with that pile of papers eventually. They're taking up space. They're cluttering your house. They're cluttering your mind. You can talk about those papers all you want, but you know that you have to stop and look at them individually. You have to go through them. You have to decide what needs to be there and what doesn't, what you're going to file, what needs to get thrown away. That is what we do. That is what I do. It's so much harder to do this alone, and you don't want to, trust me. That's why you're putting it off. So I want to encourage you to listen to this series. You're going to hear some of your own heart, some of your struggles in the case studies that I'm going to share. I wanted to go first. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to share some of my story with you. And if this resonates with you, I'd love to hear from you. I think you should reach out, and you can, of course, book a call with me, but you need someone to walk you home. So whether it's a counselor, a therapist, a pastor, a friend, a coach, a mentor, it's important. So the things, right? The things in your past, I want to ask you, is it really in the past, or is it affecting you in the present? And if that's the case, then it's not really in the past. and you need to talk it through. It's worth it. Get into the pit. Get curious about what's going on in there. As I said, the next few podcasts are going to be case studies of real people that have experienced freedom in areas of their life. I hope you can hear that I have freedom now. I've done the work and it wasn't easy, but it was worth it. If any of their stories in these next few case studies resonate with you, please let me know. My clients and I would love to know that their journey has encouraged you on yours. You can email, you can DM, send us a note over social, post a 5-star review. Anything you can do to help us reach more parents would be awesome. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear from you. I want your feedback on these case studies. Let me know what is resonating, and I just want to keep being here for you. I'm your coach. I get to walk you home. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for listening to the Families Matter Most podcast with Jenn Dean, part of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. If you are interested in contacting Jenn for one-on-one parent coaching, for speaking engagements, or just to get a little more information, please visit our website, familiesmattermost.com.
Have you booked a free strategy call yet? Because I offer free one-on-one video chats to see what coaching could be like for you. So if you've never tried it, you need to book a free strategy call right now. There's private coaching if you want help in your parenting, if you want help to deal with some anger, to work on some of your kids' negative behaviors, because yep, they all have them. If you want that, you're going to want private coaching. But also if you want to work on you, if you're in a place where you would say, you know what, I need to work on myself so that I can show up better for my family, so that I can take care of stress and anger, so that I can be a better mom, that I can show up and be more positive to the people in my life. If that is where you're at, then book this call. Let's see if private coaching or group health coaching would be a good fit for you. Book a free strategy call today.